Hello, my name is Benjamin Hart. I'm an American attorney and the managing director of Integrity Legal here in Bangkok, Thailand. As the title of this video suggests, we're discussing cannabis here in Thailand. And I thought of making this video after reading a recent article from the Pattaya Mail, that's pattayamail.com. Article is titled, Pattaya Tourist Numbers Zoom Amid Political Crisis Fears, quoting directly. A spokesperson for the Pattaya Entertainment Collective said nightlife was more or less back to normal after the pandemic, and added there was the additional bonus of cannabis with an obviously blurred distinction between medical and leisure use. So yeah, there's been a lot of discussion about this here in Thailand since the reopening, since we saw the rescission, the retraction of the emergency decree back in October 2022, which is how much of an impact has cannabis had on overall tourism? I think just from an anecdotal standpoint or just one's own observations, I think it's pretty clear it's had an impact. I definitely think cannabis, the legalization of cannabis here in Thailand and the ability to buy and use it has been a draw, at least to some extent, with regard to tourists here in Thailand. Now, I thought of quoting another article I recently read where they were talking about, now that the elections are over, they've kind of been discussing cannabis, and there's been these talks about recriminalization, which to my mind is just silly. In fact, I thought of making a video and titling it "The Definition of Insanity," and then basically getting into, you know, the old saying, what's the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. You know, at the end of the day, whatever you want to say about the prior government in Thailand, and, you know, I get it. There's a lot to be said. I've been critical of them in the past. This is one where credit is due. They got this one right. However you want to look at it, the issue of cannabis, in my opinion, and the way that they've dealt with it here in Thailand, yeah, I'm a big believer in regulation. We need to regulate it. But this notion of recriminalizing or whatever, and on top of that, this whole, medical but not recreational, I mean, come on. Why? What's with the semantic differences and the pearl clutching? You know, look, we've been dealing with this now for about a year, and the sky has not fallen. The sun has not fallen from the sky. You know, the legalization has resulted in an entirely new industry being created in Thailand. It's resulted in a lot of new jobs, not least of which in the retail sector, but also from what I'm reading, it's a benefit to Thai farmers who, quite honestly, can use all the help they can get all the time. You know, I'm from a farming background way back in my family. You know, farmers have a tough job. You know, I don't know why people are kind of overlooking that, but this is an extra cash crop for folks who could use the extra cash, honestly. Meanwhile, you know, again, at the retail level, I think I did a video recently where they said there were 14,000 retail level vendors of this. Well, that's jobs. That's commercial real estate being utilized, which, by the way, look around the world at the state of the commercial real estate sector, okay? It ain't great, you know, especially coming off the last 2.5, 3 years of what can only be described as, well, not the greatest policy thinking. Let's leave it at that. So, long story short, and the thing I'm trying to get across in this video, it's really worth a look. And stop the hyperbole, okay? The elections are over, okay? Let's look at it for what it is. The legalization of this thing has resulted in jobs. It's resulted in the creation of an industry with a massive market capitalization. It's also placed Thailand in a first mover advantage position when it comes to sort of comparative advantage in the international context, where Thailand's way ahead in terms of this becoming a possible export crop in the future. It's way, way ahead. And this has been nothing but a benefit. Again, people can have a problem, and I can totally understand how they could, with things that have occurred in past governments and past policies that have been promulgated. This really, to my mind, is not one of them. Now, regarding criminalization, if somebody wanted to say make it a criminal act to sell to children, to people under 20, to minors in Thailand, I would see no problem with that whatsoever. But that's a different type of crime. That's not the act of trading in this product in and of itself. That's the act of selling it to a child, which that's a totally different thing. I'm 100% on board with criminalizing that activity. But criminalization of cannabis itself, it's a step backward. In fact, it's many steps backward. At the same time, this whole obsession with the semantic difference between medicinal and recreational use, what's even the point of that? You know, nobody's sitting around doing that when it comes to the issue of alcohol. In fact, if anything, I think a lot of the discussions right now are talking about the demonopolization of alcohol, and not necessarily, you know, booze is going to be everywhere, but the notion that, you know, hey, there needs to be some more competition in terms of the alcohol industry. Nobody's sitting there clutching their pearls and saying, well, what's the difference between medicinal alcohol and recreational alcohol? Nobody's asking that question because it is pretty silly. And I think the same logic can apply to cannabis. We need to get past, I would maybe perhaps say, get past this whole boomer notion that reefer madness is going to kill us all. That's not really how it looks like it's worked. We've had a year of this. We've seen what it is. Quite honestly, I think it's been handled quite well by both consumers as well as those who are vendors. I think people have gone out of their way to stay within the boundaries of the law. Now, that being said, licensing needs to be maintained. Again, regulation, no problem. Licensing needs to be out there. Taxation facilities need to be set up. And yes, criminalization of those who sell to people who are underage, absolutely, I can get on board with that. But come on, at what point is it pretty darn silly to sit there saying, hey, we need to recriminalize? I just, again, the definition of insanity is doing something over and over and expecting a different outcome.